Hello there, ICS4C folks. This is our lesson on 1.3, the analysis phase of the software development lifecycle. This is the document here that we worked with the other day to get us started on the introduction to software development lifecycle. And I want to remind you of the stages: analysis, design, implementation, testing, and documentation, and maintenance. And this is the first in several days. We're going to sort of go through these phases and figure out what they do in these big real world projects using the software development lifecycle and in each of the phases. So today we're going to talk about analysis a little bit. We'll actually spend a couple days on analysis. Um, Analysis, it says, what does the customer want? What are their user specifications? So down here, when you talk about, here's the analysis phase. Some of the questions you should ask: what is the budget for the project? Who will use this project? What should the product do? Is there other software that does this already? What are some of the good or bad things about the existing product? What hardware, software? This is all, in these big real world projects, how you get going and figure out, is it worth it for a company to take on this project? Is there something that's going to work that they already have? How long is it going to take? How many people are going to need to be involved? This sort of thing. And there's all sort of a list of items that you would address. And I want to show you, and even though this won't, like, we're not going to engage in this size of project. Not really anyway. So I want to show you what that might look like, and you don't have to take any notes on this part, but so there's a few things that it might be. So this would be like a feasibility study. There could be a report that you write that just addresses all of these things: problem statement, a scope of the project, the objectives of a project, and so on. So it could be, sort of this simple, or they get more larger, right? Well, here's an example of a feasibility study. This was a specific one that I found on the internet somewhere, and you can see the detail that goes in. So this is before the project is even starting to be, whether even they've even decided to take on the project. This is a 10-page document helping them make that decision. All the things that will be required, and some basic ideas about what's there already, very detailed with respect to that project. Exactly. Here's another one. This is actually a template that it looks like the university, not the University of British Columbia, I think British Columbia, the province, that if you wanted to do a project for the government, that you'd have to fill in what they don't call it a feasibility study, they call it a project charter. And so lots of different things, and you can see the scope and stakeholders, major deliverables. That's something that we'll hear in our introductory project, is a deliverable. And this report is a huge thing that it could be a whole team of people who are responsible for. And of course, our projects won't have that big a scope, but you can probably imagine, if you're writing the next version of Windows, you want to have all this stuff clear before you start pounding away at code. All right, so I wanted to show you some of that. Now, what does that mean for us then? If we're not going to take on projects of this scope, what does it mean for us? And I'm going to show you sort of two sort of little tools that we use at this analysis phase, the very earliest phase. And this is a document that hopefully you went to Edmodo and grabbed, and if you didn't, you should do that now. This is a little note, and this is the problem that we used on day one. This is the one where we played around with some code. This is write a program that will ask the user to enter the amount of their household bills, blah, 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 blah. There's the problem. This is more like our scope of problem. We said that this question would have been like your 3C final project, and this question is going to be about the same size as our review project that we're going to be doing this unit. So there's the problem. So in the analysis phase, we're not going to do a feasibility study. It's because you're doing these projects. If this was the assignment, you'd have to do it. So how can we get going? How do we sort of start analyzing what's required? Well, there's two little tools that I'm going to show you. One is called an IPO chart. I input, P processing, O output. And if that reminds you of the hardware software business from last year, indeed this is quite the same sort of thing. So what we do is we sort of plan our solution based on how the user will have to use the program. So for this one, what would be the input from the user? Like you write a program. What does the user have to do? Well, let's go through. Prompts the user for a bill name, and then the amount. So user enters bill name. User enters. Oops. Amount. Then it stores all the blah 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 blah. The user enters 0 to quit. User enters. I'm just looking for input that the person who's using your program will have to do. Then in a separate function, the total of all bills. See, there's no other input in here. Perhaps in this part it says, along with the typical input and output, include an appropriate message plus at least 2 links, blah 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 blah. Include a way to see the execution of the JavaScript. Remember, this was kind of weird for us last year. How do you get the JavaScript to actually run? Well, and that depends on how you design it, right? And the design is the next couple of days. But for instance, if we decided to use this press F12 to see the results, or copy this into JS bin, or however we're going to get the user to get the program running, we would plan this. This is kind of like the initial definition of the problem. User presses F12 to run JavaScript. So what are the processing steps? Well, that means like what's the computer doing? Like what's my program going to do? Well, what does it do? It says stores all names, stores names, amounts in arrays. User enters, then in a separate function, the total of all bills for the month is calculated. Total calculated. Calculated. And this amount is reported to the user. The reporting to the user has got to do with output, right? So over here, maybe, I'm skipping around a little bit, but you know, it doesn't have to be, I have to fill in everything here first, but output, total reported to user. And then what else? Well, it talks about, a little bit about the HTML. This is almost all JavaScript, and so we might want to, you know, make sure that we know this is in JavaScript. And then I guess it's kind of up to you to think of, you know, for HTML and CSS, do you think of that as processing or output? Probably output. It's almost all a visual output. So HTML and CSS, and then we can list those elements. What does it say? Output data, HTML, typical input and output, an image, 2 links. And so already this is sort of it's almost giving us a formal way to think about the problem and start us to thinking about the solution. In your CSS file, included at least 5 elements. There, and that's the problem sort of defined, the analysis of the problem sort of in a very formal way. Not as formal as these feasibility studies that we were looking at, but it gives us a pretty easy way to almost put the problem in our own words. Here's another way. Uh, it's called the problem definition table. Known facts, user requirements, necessary processing, alternate solutions. So, and again, here we just fill in this table, and that'll give us a way to think of the problem. So the known facts. User, what's going on there? User enters bill names, and amounts. That might be in the user requirements too. We might decide, okay, the known facts has to be over here maybe. And so what would be a known fact is that we could put the known fact is we've got a JavaScript portion. And this is kind of up to you how you want to organize your thoughts here, but filling this out is what we do in the analysis phase. That's going to be our version of the feasibility study. So user enters bill names and amounts. User presses F12. Necessary processing is the total is added up and reported. And I think that was it for that question, wasn't it? Wasn't that all it was supposed to do? Processing would be also the, we could say the CSS and HTML. Alternate solutions, well, this could be anything that we use, talk about in here. This is almost like our brainstorming. So we could use, it says to use arrays, but maybe, for loop or a while loop. This is kind of like our brainstorming in here, the alternate solutions. And it could be that you leave that blank, but I really prefer you think of something to put in that alternate solutions pile. And you see, well, what have we done here? Essentially, what we've done is we've proven that we understood what we were asked to do. Okay, and that gets us going on the problem. So, what are we going to do today? Today's task is to look back, and in this file, there's going to be your grade 11 final project problems. And just restated, and you're not going to have to do all of these, but the homework is to do an IPO chart and a problem definition table for one of the problems. Probably the one that you actually did, that's the one you know the most. And so you're going to, you could copy these tables and then fill them out for the problem that you want, or you could put it in a new file. I can't remember what I asked you to do on the website, but follow those instructions. Remember to save your note version of this, please, and then get to the homework. All right, that's it. Analysis phase.